The moment I stepped into the venue, someone called my name over the microphone. For a split second, the ambient noise in the room shifted. The gaze of over 100 people snapped toward me all at once. Fingers froze on the rims of wine glasses. Forks remained suspended in midair. My fingers brushed against the program resting on my lap. The English sentence I had seen earlier floated in my mind like meaningless noise. A seat offered is not always a place. Without understanding why, I pressed my hand against the paper. My sister, who had been in the middle of her congratulatory speech, held her script against her chest and stared directly at me. It had been 5 years since I last saw them, and at this family celebration, I was not exactly a welcome guest. I knew that if I came here, something would happen. Knowing that, I didn't react. I just sat in the seat assigned to me. The reasons to run away and the reasons to stay carried the same weight. Should I not have returned to this seat, or was my choice to return simply a mistake in itself? I sat quietly in the atmosphere where no applause rose. After my name was called, my sister turned her gaze back to the crowd. She continued her speech as if nothing had happened. There was no introduction, no words of welcome, just over 100 pairs of eyes focusing on me for a moment, then looking away. It had been 5 years since I last saw them, and at this family celebration, I was not exactly a welcome guest. Phase 2. My name is Alice. I am 31 years old. I grew up as the younger daughter in a family of 4. My sister, Madeline, is 3 years older than me. Since childhood, she had excellent grades and was very social. She gathered all the family's expectations. After graduating from college, she joined a nonprofit organization. Now she holds the title of director. Locally, she is known as the perfect daughter. She knows the names of donors and the faces of government officials far better than I ever did. My father works in real estate. Outside the home, he is known as a calm and sincere man. My mother cherished that reputation more than anything. She always worried about how the family was seen. Inside our house, correctness and appearances came first. Feelings were often an afterthought. I remember a dinner party when I was 12. I had excitedly talked about a book I loved, stumbling over my words in my enthusiasm. Madeline, then 15, had gently placed a hand on my arm. "Alice," she had said, her voice dripping with sweet concern, "you're speaking too loudly. It makes you sound uneducated." The table had fallen silent. My mother had smiled apologetically to the guests, validating Madeline's correction. In that moment, my passion became shame. That was Madeline's talent. She didn't cut you with a knife. She suffocated you with a silk pillow. She maintained the family's dignity by pruning away my wildness. Over the years, I learned that in her presence, silence was the only armor that couldn't be critiqued. My grandmother, Margaret, is the guest of honor today. She is the oldest member of this family. When I was a child, she was the only one who looked at who I was as a person. She didn't care about my grades or my potential. I wasn't particularly a failure in the family. I never caused any trouble. I just didn't have a title as prestigious as my sister's. My explanations of my future were always vague. What are you doing now? For a long time, I couldn't answer that question with confidence. Before I knew it, I was categorized within the family. The daughter who requires an explanation. The daughter who falls slightly short of expectations. No one said it out loud, but everyone treated me that way. As a child, I was always the one who understood family conversations a beat too late. I couldn't immediately understand why my sister and parents were laughing. I developed a habit of mimicking their expressions, searching for the correct reaction. At the dinner table, my sister was always the first topic. Grades, college, scholarships, awards. I played the role of the listener. Only when the conversation lulled did I finally mention my own news. "I see," my mother would say. Then she would immediately return to another topic. It wasn't that my father didn't listen to me. He just didn't evaluate anything after hearing it. He didn't agree. He didn't disagree. By changing the subject in silence, the atmosphere of the house always returned to my sister's side. Gradually, I gave up explaining. It was easier to remain silent than to continue explanations that were never understood. Only my grandmother, Margaret, would ask me sometimes, "Are you having fun doing that?" An adult who asked about my feelings rather than my results was rare in this house. When answering that question, I felt something for the first time. I thought, maybe my life belongs to me. But that feeling didn't last long. In the family, I continued to be treated as the daughter still in progress. the unfinished daughter. Before I knew it, I had gotten used to not being expected. I got used to being compared. I got used to skipping explanations. That was the quietest way to adapt and survive in this house. The venue was a lodge on the outskirts of town. It wasn't our family home. Yet, the air drifting through the room was no different from the family atmosphere I knew so well. On the back of the place card at my seat, an English sentence was printed. A seat offered is not always a place. It looked like part of the decoration. So I didn't try to interpret the meaning. I turned the card over and placed it on the edge of the table. Grandmother was in the center, father to her right, mother to her left. My sister stood right next to them, script in hand. Relatives sat in their usual seats, at their usual distances. I was guided to a seat at the very edge. I don't remember who guided me. When I realized it, I was already sitting there. My hand holding the fork trembled slightly. It wasn't nervousness. It was just my body remembering on its own. The habit of apologizing first. The habit of falling silent before explaining. The habit of withdrawing myself to avoid breaking the mood. 5 years ago, I left this family, taking those habits with me. At the time, I was 26. My career wasn't going well. I told them I could make a living programming, but my family didn't believe me. That sounds like a hobby, they said. How long do you intend to keep doing that? My sister said those words. My mother nodded silently. My father changed the subject. I didn't argue. Whenever I argued, I was told I was being emotional. That night, I left the house without saying a word. I changed my phone number. I didn't give them my address. I cut off contact. Sometimes I think I ran away. But for the person I was back then, that was the only choice. In those 5 years, I started a company. Employees joined, and the work continued. I didn't tell my family. I intentionally kept my distance so they wouldn't know. And yet, 3 days ago, I received a short message from my cousin. Your sister is investigating you. No reason was written, but that single sentence was enough to give me a bad feeling. My sister, Madeline, was someone who always stood on the correct side. Justice, morals, family, love. Whenever she used those words, someone always got hurt. Maybe I shouldn't have come here. Thinking that, I put down my fork and kept my back straight. No matter what happens, I decided I wouldn't run away today. I still didn't know if that was the right decision. 3 days ago, that short message from my cousin brought me here. Your sister is investigating you. That was all it said. It didn't say why, or the context, or what exactly she was looking into. Just that one sentence brought back a tension in my chest I hadn't felt in a long time. For 5 years, I had intentionally lived apart from my family. I changed my number. I didn't share my address. I didn't even send New Year's cards. I didn't want to escape. At least, that's what I tell myself. But I felt that if I didn't keep my distance, I would return to being the one who constantly had to explain herself. I hadn't told almost anyone about my work. The fact that I built a company, that I have employees, that we are making a profit. I didn't want it known. I knew if they found out, it would inevitably turn into a conversation about evaluation and comparison. When I read my cousin's message, my first thought was a question. Why investigate me now, after all this time? I didn't take any action immediately that night. I closed the message. I left my phone face down on the desk and couldn't move for a while. I replayed the meaning of the word investigate in my head. Was she searching my name? Was she digging up my past? Or was she asking around about me? I thought I had lived without leaving much of a trail for 5 years. My real name isn't listed on the company name. I refused interviews and didn't publish my photo. I intentionally chose a place that didn't intersect with my family's world. Still, if someone wanted to look, they would find something. I opened my laptop. I searched for my own name, old registration information, small technical articles from a few years ago. There was almost no information that directly linked to my family. Confirming that, I felt a little relieved. At the same time, a strange sense of unease remained. If my sister was just investigating out of curiosity, she wouldn't need to be this cautious. She was investigating with the premise of showing someone. It was more natural to think that way. I couldn't immediately deny that possibility. I took a sip of wine. I put down the glass and looked at the clock. I hadn't received any specific invitation. No one had contacted me. And yet, I felt something had already begun to move. Family time, which I had no plans to return to, was quietly approaching me. That premonition was the only thing that wouldn't disappear that night. Sleep didn't come easily during those 3 days. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined Madeline holding a file folder, dissecting my 5 years of freedom. Had she found the time I was hospitalized for exhaustion? Did she know about the loan I barely paid back in the first year? These weren't failures to me. They were scars of battle, proof of my survival. But in Madeline's hands, they would be evidence of recklessness. I felt like a suspect in a crime I didn't commit. The solitude I cherished suddenly felt like a cage. I realized then that physical distance meant nothing if they could still invade my mind. I had to go back, not to fight, but to reclaim the narrative inside my own head. I know my sister well. Madeline was someone who always stood on the right side. Justice, morality, good intentions, family love. She was better than anyone at using those words. I still don't know if she is any malice, but the moment she believes she is right, those around her have no choice but to follow that righteousness. It was like that when we were kids too. Whenever I made a mistake, my sister would say this, "I'm saying this for your own good. We're family, so I'm being honest with you." It was hard to argue with those words. If I denied them, I became the ungrateful sister. If I stayed silent, my sister's righteousness became fact. The night I left home 5 years ago was the same. I talked about my work, that I got a small project, that I thought I could make it work if I kept at it. My sister thought for a moment and said gently, "Aren't you worried about your future if you continue that?" My mother nodded silently. My father put down his glass and changed the subject. I couldn't say anything in that moment. I couldn't deny it. I couldn't explain. I just stood up silently. The next morning, I left the house. Maybe I betrayed my family back then, or maybe I just ran away from them. Even now, I don't know the answer. After my cousin's message, I didn't contact anyone. Not my sister, not my parents, not my grandmother. After finishing my meetings, drinking wine alone at night, I read that sentence over and over. Your sister is investigating you. I couldn't think of a reason. I haven't caused trouble for the family. I haven't borrowed money. I haven't used their name. Still, when my sister makes a move, it always takes the form where the reason is justified later. For the first time, I consulted a third party to protect my life. He is my business partner, and he is much more realistic than I am. When I explained the situation simply, he thought for a moment and said, "Is there anything you'd be in trouble for if she found out?" Trouble. I couldn't answer immediately. I haven't done anything illegal. I'm not hiding any crimes. I just have a past, circumstances, and choices I don't want my family to know about. Probably nothing, I answered. He nodded and said, "Then, the one in trouble is her." That phrase stuck with me oddly. He looked at me with a confusion I rarely saw. "Ellis, you built this company from nothing. You employ 50 people. You're respected in the industry. Why does one person's opinion threaten all of that?" His question was logical, but families aren't built on logic. Because, I whispered, realizing the truth as I said it, in that house, I'm not the CEO. I'm just the little sister who couldn't follow the rules. He sighed, tapping his pen on the desk. Then maybe it's time you introduce the CEO to them. Or at least, remind yourself that she exists. The next day, I received an invitation from my grandmother. It was a formal invitation to today's celebration. There were many reasons to decline. Work is busy. I'm not feeling perfect. Showing up now would only cause confusion. But I came anyway. Keeping my distance without confirming what my sister was trying to do felt indistinguishable from running away. When my sister started her congratulatory speech at the venue, I finally understood. She didn't call me back. She intended to put me on stage. But whether that was for my sake, for the family's sake, or for her own sake, I still couldn't judge the difference. After receiving the invitation from my grandmother, I didn't send a reply right away. I already knew the date and place. The envelope sat on my desk, constantly entering my field of vision. To go or not to go. It should be a simple choice. But I felt an unusual weight in that decision. The reason was clear. My sister is investigating me. I already knew that fact. Moreover, I had already told a third party about it. When I explained the situation to my co-founder, he asked a short but precise question. "Is there anything you'd be in trouble for if she found out?" I couldn't answer instantly. I haven't done anything illegal. No hidden crimes. The company's management and accounting are transparent. Still, I was a little surprised at myself for not being able to answer no immediately. The trouble isn't the facts themselves. It was how the facts would be used. Seeing my silence, He said this: "Investigations aren't usually done to solve a doubt. They're often done to justify a conclusion." Those words stayed in my head. If my sister simply wanted to know my current situation, she could just ask through the family. But the moment the expression investigating comes up, it's no longer just checking in. I couldn't deny that possibility. I searched my name one more time. Old registration info, small industry articles from a few years back, anonymous speaking announcements. My real name hardly appears. I've intentionally avoided photos. For 5 years, I have built up my history in a place that doesn't intersect with the family context. Still, if the person searching has an objective, any history can be given meaning. I've seen that happen many times in business. Numbers change their impression depending on how they are cut. Facts change their evaluation depending on how they are arranged. My sister was very good at that kind of manipulation. Since we were children, she always chose the correct explanation. With words no one could call a lie, she would quietly determine someone's position. I stared at the invitation on the desk. Is this invitation for grandmother? For the family? Or for my sister? I called only my grandmother. The only purpose was to confirm my attendance. I didn't probe anything. I didn't ask anything. Grandmother said in her usual voice, "I'd be happy if you came." That was all. I didn't know if that answer included a plan. After hanging up, I thought for a long time. There were more than enough reasons not to go. There were almost no reasons to go. Still, I wrote my reply. "I will attend." Just that short line. I didn't add any extra words. I didn't intend to go there to win. I didn't intend to debate anyone. However, knowing what role I was being given before keeping my distance felt more like my own choice than keeping my distance without knowing. I still didn't know at this point if that was the right thing to do. Near the entrance of the venue, I stopped once. The scene visible through the glass looked like any other celebration from a distance. White tablecloths, round tables, flower decorations, the arrangement of people. But unconsciously, I was counting that arrangement. Grandmother's seat was in the center. My parents were right near her. My sister was near the microphone, and my seat was prepared at the edge. It might be a coincidence. It might just be a catering convenience. Still, I could clearly imagine myself sitting there before I even entered. I looked at myself in the mirror once. It wasn't a special outfit, just a plain work jacket. No decorations, no bold statements. In my family, I always chose the role of adding nothing. Don't stand out. Don't explain. Don't assert. My body remembered that this was the safest form of survival here. Before opening the door, I asked myself, did I come here to prove something today? Or did I come to prove nothing? The answer hadn't come yet. But if I stopped here, I would become the person who didn't come again. I didn't want to choose that this time. I slowly opened the door and stepped inside. The ceremony had already begun. The suburban lodge was larger than I expected. Many cars were already lined up in the parking lot. Celebratory flowers adorned the outside of the building. At the reception, there was a photo of my grandmother and a brief biography. I gave my name and received my name tag. The staff pointed to a seat in the back without saying anything special. The moment I entered, the voices of over 100 people rushed at me like a single mass. Laughter, glasses clinking, the sound of dishes stacking. It was a lively atmosphere, typical of a family celebration. I kept my gaze low and headed for my assigned seat. I couldn't see my grandmother yet. That was when someone called my name over the microphone. The sound in the venue shifted for a split second. The gaze of over 100 people snapped toward me. Fingers froze on glass rims. Forks hovered in the air. My sister, in the middle of her speech, held her script to her chest and looked at me. Maybe I should have lightly raised my hand to respond, but knowing that, I sat down and didn't stand up. No applause occurred. My sister stared at me for a few seconds. Then, she continued her speech as if nothing had happened. No introduction. No welcome. Only the fact that I was there was shared with the room. I straightened my back and returned my gaze to the front. I had decided not to run. That was all. An aunt I hadn't seen in years walked past my table. She slowed down just enough to make eye contact. She offered a tight, pitying smile, and then accelerated as if fearing I might ask for money. I heard snippets of whispers floating like dust in the air. Is that her? She looks tired. I heard she's struggling alone. They weren't malicious whispers, which made them worse. They were whispers of validation. My presence served as a cautionary tale that made their own obedient lives feel more secure. I was the darkness that made their light shine brighter. I took a sip of water, the liquid cold against my throat, washing down the urge to scream that they knew nothing about me. The speech carefully listed grandmother's achievements, years of community service, donations, support for the younger generation. Every single one of them was a fact. My sister wasn't lying. That's exactly why her choice of words bothered me. Several times, my sister used the phrase family support. Each time, I wondered when my name would come up, but my sister didn't touch on me. Toward the end of the speech, my sister looked up from her script. She looked around the venue, then softened her voice slightly. Please allow me to talk about the family today. I think grandmother would be pleased. Today is a very special day for our family. The venue went quiet. Actually, a family member we haven't been able to contact for a long time has come here today. I let out one slow breath. In every family, there are those who choose a different path. Someone who made a choice that cannot necessarily be called correct. She didn't name anyone, but I could feel the density of the air around my seat change slightly. Even so, family is a place you can always return to. I quietly aligned the knife and fork on the table. Righteousness is different for each person, but as a family, I believe there are things we must protect. My sister's voice was calm and polite. It wasn't an accusation. It wasn't an indictment. It was simply an evaluation. Before coming here, I imagined my sister might expose something, like bringing up numbers, revealing the past, making someone testify. But what she was doing was a much quieter method. She was trying to define my position with words. The person who chose a different path. The person who made a choice that cannot be called correct. She didn't explain who that was. Because she didn't explain, the room started to imagine on its own. I didn't stand up. If I stood up here, I would become the side making excuses. If I stayed silent, I would become the side being explained. Neither felt like my role. My sister concluded her speech, and applause broke out. I didn't clap, but with my hands on my lap. I didn't break my posture. Next, grandmother slowly stood up. Someone pulled out her chair and handed her the microphone. Grandmother looked around the venue once, slowly. Then, she looked in an unexpected direction, toward me. I reflexively looked up. Grandmother looked at me and nodded slightly. Then she said, "Today, I want to thank everyone who came here." It was a standard opening. But before that, there is one thing I absolutely must say. The venue grew even quieter. I have lived the longest in this family. Light laughter rippled through the room. So, I believe I have seen a lot of what is a right path and what is a wrong path. Grandmother chose her words slowly. But there is something I still don't understand. She looked at my sister for a split second. It is the question of who gets to evaluate a person's life and when. The air in the venue changed. I am proud that my grandchildren have each chosen different paths. I held my breath. It is not about whether they are doing well. It is not about whether it is correct. Grandmother looked clearly at me and said, "The fact that they are walking a path they chose themselves. That fact alone is enough for me." Somewhere in the room, I heard someone gasp. A family is not a place to correct someone. It is not a place to rearrange those who have returned. The script in my sister's hand slipped slightly. "Today is my celebration," grandmother said calmly. "So please do not use the people here as materials for evaluation." The venue fell completely silent. Grandmother said one last thing. "I am simply happy that my grandchild came here." That was all. She didn't mention anyone's name. She didn't blame anyone. But the narrative my sister's speech had almost built quietly collapsed right there. Applause followed, a beat late. I realized for the first time that my breathing had become shallow. My sister looked at grandmother, nodded slightly, and said nothing more. I didn't stand up. I didn't run. I didn't make excuses. I just sat there. That was the only choice I could make. After the ceremony ended, I watched from my seat as the atmosphere slowly returned to the buzz of everyday life. People stood up. They shifted their glasses. They headed toward my grandmother, lining up to offer their blessings. The silence that had been so tense just moments ago seemed to have vanished from everyone's memory. I didn't move immediately. The backs of people standing up overlapped, and the sound of chair legs scraping the floor echoed. Every time someone passed behind me, the smell of perfume mixed with alcohol made my throat feel a little dry. I didn't touch my glass. I traced the edge of the coaster with my fingertip, like I was confirming its outline. Then, the place card I had left on the edge of the table came into view, even though it remained face down. That English sentence rose up on its own. I still didn't try to grasp the meaning, but my body knew that here, A seat is always used as a substitute for something else. A little further away, my sister was laughing and exchanging words with someone. I couldn't hear her voice, but every time the other person nodded, I saw my sister place her hand gently on them. It looked like a gesture of comfort, or perhaps guidance. I don't know if my name came up. I don't know, but I could feel the air being arranged again. I realized it for the first time then. My sister doesn't want to blame me. She wants to complete the explanation. Before anyone has doubts, before anyone sympathizes, she decides my outline first. The person who chose a different path. The person who made a choice that cannot be called correct. By placing words like that, I stopped looking at my sister. If I kept looking, I would want to confirm something. If I wanted to confirm, I would eventually want to explain. The moment I explained, I would return to being the side, getting them to understand in family conversations. I pressed down on the place card and turned it face up this time. The side with my name printed on it was thinner paper than I expected. Just that simple card was treated here like a mark determining a person's position. I stared at the name, and then slowly slid it to the side. Off-center, just a little. Not enough for anyone to notice. But for me, that was enough. Suddenly, a relative in the next seat moved their mouth to say, "Long time no see." The voice was small, just a form of politeness. I smiled and nodded, adding nothing. If asked about my life, I had answers ready. But current events here aren't information. They become material. I learned that 5 years ago. I don't need big words to distance myself from my sister's explanation. I won't argue. I won't correct. I just shift my standing position a little, just like I moved this card. I felt that just doing that changed the role I had to accept. I touched the glass on the table, confirming the coldness lingering on my fingertips. When I return to this environment, my body always reacts first. Before thinking, I get tense. Before judging, I brace myself. That habit hadn't disappeared even after 5 years. But today, I knew I didn't have to follow that habit. How someone sees me and how I live are no longer on the same line. The evaluation given here is an event happening in a place that cannot reach my current life. I slowly leaned my body against the backrest. Not to run away, not to stand my ground, just to settle my body's position right here. Don't explain. Don't choose. Don't compete for righteousness. I quietly decided in my heart that today was a day to do none of those things. If I stood up, eyes would meet mine. Someone would call out to me. Someone would say something. That felt terribly heavy to me right now. I reached for the water on the table and took just one sip. I noticed my hand was shaking more quietly than I had thought. I didn't run. I didn't make excuses. I didn't argue or correct. I still didn't really know if that was right. After a while, my mother came near my seat. She didn't call out to me. She didn't stop. But as she passed in front of me, our gazes touched for just a moment. There was no accusation there, nor relief. There was only the look of seeing something she doesn't know how to handle. My father was at a distant table, talking about something with a relative. I didn't check if he was looking at me. My sister stood by grandmother, returning to her role of receiving blessings. No one came to me. It felt less like being excluded, and more like the arrangement was finished. I was a little surprised at myself for accepting that feeling so calmly. For a while, I quietly observed how I was placed in the setting. No one brings up my name, but no one is completely ignoring my existence either. Gazes come my way once in a roundabout manner, then immediately return to another topic. This was repeated several times. I knew well how this family treated problems. Rather than solving them, they rearranged them to pretend nothing had happened. It's not about who is right. It's about who sits where, who is at the center of the topic, and who is on the outside. Today, I was placed completely on the outside. It felt closer to not being given a place, rather than having my place taken away. I was a little surprised at myself for accepting that sensation more coolly than I expected. In the past, just that would have made my chest tighten. I have to say something. I have to clear up the misunderstanding. I have to explain properly. Thinking that, I would have searched for my words over and over. But today, that impulse hardly arose. Even if I don't explain, no one is troubled. Even if I remain misunderstood, my life continues tomorrow. That fact had taken a clear shape inside me before I knew it. Until I came here today, I think I was always afraid of not being evaluated, being thought of as unsuccessful, being thought of as a failure, being thought of as having made the wrong choice. But what is happening here now is none of those things. I am simply not even actively placed as a subject of evaluation. There was a part of me that was strangely relieved by that. If I am not evaluated, I am not denied either. At least, the meaning of my life isn't decided on the spot by someone else's words. I had experienced this sensation once before. That night, I left the house. Back then, too, I wasn't understood by anyone. I wasn't approved by anyone. I just went outside holding only my own choice. It was lonely, but at the same time, it was a very quiet freedom. Maybe the me of today is a little stronger than the me of that time. At least I know that I don't have to choose a way of life just to explain it to someone. I haven't regained anything in this place. Not honor. Not the resolution of misunderstandings. Not reconciliation with my family. But I was finally beginning to realize that I hadn't lost anything either. Was I hurt by coming here? Or did I just confirm something? I couldn't even distinguish that myself yet. After a while, grandmother walked toward me during a break in the flow of people. When she came close enough that no one around could hear, she gently held my hand. "Thank you for coming." That was all. She didn't explain the meaning of her earlier words. She didn't talk about my sister. She didn't bring up the family. She just said that to the me who was here now. I couldn't reply well to that single phrase. Was I happy? Was I saved? Or did I think it was finally over? I hadn't sorted it out myself yet. Grandmother looked at my expression once. Without saying anything more, she returned to the circle of people. I watched her back for a long time. Maybe I came here for this person. Or maybe I came to be seen off by this person. Eventually, the number of people leaving the venue began to increase. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. I quietly left my seat and headed for the entrance. No one stopped me. When I got outside, the night air was colder than I expected. I walked to the edge of the parking lot and looked back at the building once. Inside the windows, smiles, applause, and the time of celebration still remained. I didn't go back there. I got into my car, started the engine, and sat motionless for a while. As I drove onto the highway, the lights of the lodge faded into the rearview mirror. They shrank until they were indistinguishable from the stars. The silence inside the car was different from the silence in the venue. It wasn't heavy or oppressive. It was empty in the best possible way. I gripped the steering wheel, feeling the vibration of the engine. A machine I paid for, fueling a journey I chose. The transition from Margaret's granddaughter and Madeline's sister back to simply Alice felt like shedding a heavy, ill-fitting coat. The cold air rushing through the vents felt like purification. I wasn't running away. I was commuting back to reality. Did I do the right thing today? Should I have stood up? Should I have said something? Or should I not have come? I still couldn't give an answer to any of them. But there was one thing that was clear. I didn't accept anyone's evaluation in that place. Not my sister's evaluation. Not the family's evaluation. Not the praise. Not the disappointment. I chose to go home without receiving them. Returning to a prepared seat doesn't necessarily mean it becomes my place. I just learned that physically today. Whether that is an escape or a boundary line, the current me can't distinguish it yet. When I got home, the clock pointed to a little before midnight. I took off my jacket and sat on the sofa without turning on the lights. It was quiet. It was a place where no one said my actions today were right or wrong. I asked myself, did I abandon the role I should have accepted today? Or did I finally choose the role of not accepting? The answer didn't come yet. But tomorrow, I will return to my work and continue my life. I felt that at least that wouldn't change. Whether this choice was correct or not, thinking that it is not today's family, but the future me who decides that, I closed my eyes. Was my choice to stand up silently and leave the right one? Or did I just run away? What do you think you would have done?